We're excited for our next speaker, who is Jessica Greer Morris, the co-founder and executive director of Girl Be Heard. And Girl Be Heard is a nonprofit theater company that brings global issues affecting girls center stage by empowering young women to tell their stories. What began in 2008 with 12 girls is now a 170 girls strong organization. Their youth-led global movement engages audience at the White House, United Nations, State Department, TED conferences, detention centers, schools, and community centers. Girl Be Heard empowers girls to speak out about issues they care about most, from body image to violence against women. GBH runs both after-school and weekend education programs where all of their theatrical work is generated. Please welcome me in welcoming Jessica.
Oh, got it up. Okay, wonderful. Hi, everybody. I'm so happy to be here. I saw Kota as a little mustard seed grow, and it's just amazing. I got to not only be in front of amazing women, but amazing artists and playwrights and actors. So you're my people, and I feel very happy to be in the Village today, so thank you so much. So a little bit about Girl Be Heard. I just would warn you, I turned 50 on Thursday, and I'm like so anti-ageism, so I just want to say, like, it's really cool to grow old, so don't believe anything that you hear in the media. Don't believe any messages. It's just not true. And we were doing this exercise, which is basically the story of my life, right? I create safe spaces for women and girls to share their stories and share their truths. I was like, what about when you're with white, straight males at a corporation? I don't think they're saying the same thing. I don't think they're the same voices. I have these amazing women on my board. They're all so humble. I'm like, who wants to be the next chair? And they're like, oh, I'm not good enough. Or I'm like, you're freaking like running the world. What are you talking about? And there are a couple of white men, and we joke with them because they're all ready to take the board chair position. And they're honestly not necessarily as qualified as the women. So I just want to say, like, gender's real. Gender-based violence is real. Gender messages is real. It's so real, and it's really the heart of what we do at Girl Be Heard. So I'm just going to tell you a little bit about, I think this is the wrong PowerPoint, but I'll make it work. So our mission is to develop, amplify, and celebrate the voice of young women through socially conscious theater making. This is a little video about, can you guys put up the sound up? Is that possible? If not, I'll just keep going. But if you can put the sound, I'd love to play that later. One of the reasons I like to play a video is because this is not Jessica Be Heard. I might be an evangelist for women's rights, for Black Lives Matter, for all kinds of social justice causes, but so many young people, and we serve mostly young people of color, they are not heard. Their voices are not heard. So really, my job is to tell you about Girl Be Heard, and then I'm going to tell you how we can stage the revolution so you can make more spaces for more voices to be heard. You heard a little bit about what we do, which is that we start out with 12 girls in 2008. We now have a lot more than 170 company members, and that's just the theater company. Hundreds of others in after-school programs, hundreds of others in churches, in detention centers. We even have a program in Trinidad using our curriculum methodology. And I'm going to invite you to say if you have any young people that are 12 to 21 that are female identified, that means non-binary, transgender. I'm going to tell you how they can come join us because all of our programs are free. So we also have performances. So a lot of people know us for our performances. We performed in 8 countries. State Department funds these global tours. We performed here in New York all the time. We do everything from street theater to housing development. We literally perform anywhere, anytime. But 99.9% of what we do is creating these safe spaces for young women to tell their stories. And we do that through a lot of basically the whole year program. Like that's how long it can take to basically create the voice that was talked about before. What's your authentic voice? And I'll tell you a little bit about my story. If there's time, I actually have a monologue I'll share with you. But I am a survivor of gender-based violence, and I don't talk about it, so you're going to feel sorry for me. I've seen enough therapists that, I've experienced that. But it's really, I share that because I'm a story of recovery. I'm a story in which sharing my story with others helped to break me out of isolation and realize 7 out of 10 women and girls have or will experience physical or sexual violence. It is typical for us to experience this. It's atypical not. So I share my story a lot. I'm very open about it. And there are so many roads to recovery, but writing is such a healing force. I mean, it was talked about morning pages before. Morning pages saved my life. If I wasn't able to write down this story, to write down my truth, how would I even know? And what they say, and we talk about this a lot at Girl Be Heard, if you don't listen to the whispers, you're going to have to hear the screams. So sometimes we have to get really, really, really still and really quiet. Really quiet. I happen to meditate to actually hear those voices. So this is our curriculum. I have so much to tell you. I'm going to go through these quickly because most important is I want to hear from you. But we have a very, clear 36-week curriculum, but it's not like any other. When we meet with our young people, they decide what they want to do for the year. They decide what their story is going to be. So you can take a chapter about colorism, about gender-based violence, about sex trafficking, body image, and you can pick the issues you care about most and the ones you want to talk about. So it's kind of like a smorgasbord curriculum where it's driven by young people. What our young people have to say, I can pass this PowerPoint after, but these are just a couple of the amazing young women in our program. Karen Vigos from the South Bronx, and when she came to us, she was so timid, and she didn't know anything about global issues, and she learned about the rape epidemic in Congo and ended up taking that show to the White House. Georgie in the middle. Georgie actually tried out for a show about sex trafficking, and she was only 14. And we said to her, this is a very difficult show to write. It's a very difficult show for anyone. So we were really thinking about older people. So it's I'm not sure how you got in, but we're happy you're here. We have so many other shows. And she explained that her best friend was trafficked in Haiti when she was 9 years old and that she was missing. And she had to be in this play in order to tell that story and in order for her own healing. And the beautiful news is that young person was found and we actually told her story using her in her own words. And that's very typical of Girl Be Heard. You learn your own personal story, and then you tell that. That's what we focus on the first 6 months. Who are you? What do you care about? And then the second 6 months is focusing on global issues. So we did a show last year about rape culture. A shock that we had to do this show. I mean, we had a president who was like talking about pussy grabbing, and so our young people talk about and write shows about things they care about most. And it was so troubling to them. They knew the 7 to 10 statistic, but to know that misogyny was actually running for president in the United States, inspired this show. I have a video here, but again, I want to make sure that we hear from you. Sunday workshop. So it all began with these 12 girls on Sunday. I lovingly call it feminist church because you can come after church, and it's also, a lot of times we had no money at the beginning, and so we had to go to faith-based organizations. They donated space for us. So this is the root of our program. Now we have the same program in the South Bronx, here in Manhattan, 12 schools, detention centers in Trinidad. So it's a very replicable program. People say it's so innovative and radical. We get girls in a room and listen to them. And that's unfortunately really radical. And we're happy to bring it to your community if you want. This is our group from Tremont Church. One of our board members is a pastor in this church, so we have very, very, very strong relationships with NGOs, with other sister and brother organizations. So this is just one example of that. This is our Unplugged show. I'm going to invite you to some shows after so you can actually see what I'm talking about. And this is just a map of New York City of the places that we work. If you take a look at this map, New York City is actually one of the most segregated cities in the United States. If you look at Title I schools, if you look at where people who are poor live, it is the epitome of inequality. So we tend to bring our programs to the areas with the greatest health and economic and other disparities. So look at the South Bronx, look at Northern Manhattan, and look at Central Brooklyn. It doesn't mean we won't bring our program elsewhere, but we've made a really conscious choice to bring our programs to areas where they might not have arts programming. So we also work in ACS, that's the Administrative Children's Services. We work with girls in foster care and detention centers. So we have a pilot program running in a detention center that will probably be replicated in other places. I can tell you a little bit also, say you're interested in sponsoring a girl or sponsoring a detention centers, and you really want to hone in on one piece of the work that we do, I'm happy to talk to you about that. But as you can see, we protect young people's anonymity, especially in places like transitional housing. And so we might have photos of our young people's feet, but we'll never show their faces. But we do have a photographer that goes in and actually does headshots for them, just for them only. Because if you want to be a performer, it's really expensive to get headshots. And so we want to make sure to give every tool possible to all of our young people. In terms of across borders, we're an NGO of the UN. I don't know if anyone here is from Women's Peace Builders. No, not today. So it's just one of the many partners that we worked with the UN very early on. But that program has really blown up globally. And this is the group in Trinidad. We like to say we do development in an empowering way, just like we do with our mission, which is develop, amplify, and celebrate the voices of young women. So that means that we don't go like McDonald's and stamp our brand on another country. We don't go and pee on a fire hydrant and say this program's ours. We choose arts organizations and activists and artists in country, and then we mentor them. So I might go down to Trinidad every other month and raise money to do that, but I do that because artists are some of the most exploited people in the world. You usually have to cocktail waitress just to be able to do a show. No one's paying people for art, especially in this country. Now, shout out to Cuba and other places with better governments that actually have more equality and treat artists more fairly, but it's not that way in this country, and it certainly isn't that way in Trinidad. So building capacity there for artists and activists to be paid. Economic justice is central to what we do. We do not take volunteers. Anyone who graduates from our program, whether they're 13 or they're 22, they get paid $13 an hour for every rehearsal and every performance. So a lot of times people ask us, now this wasn't without sacrifice. We actually started in 2008. We didn't get our 501c3s till 2011, and I didn't go on payroll till 2013. So myself and my co-founder, we all had a lot of other jobs because our obsession was raising the money so we never had to ask an artist ever to perform again without paying them fairly. So whether we get paid or not, this is how we treat our artists and our activists. And we think that there needs to be an end to exploitation for artists and activists. It's valuable work, especially if you're looking at what's happening in our country today. It is activists that are driving the change, so we need to support them. So we work all the time with other sister and brother nonprofits. We love partnering. I always say, turn on your phones. Like, let's start partnering now. Reach out to me on LinkedIn. Like, this is the beginning of not only just giving you a presentation, but how can we work together in partnership to stop inequality? So I hope this is beginning with a lot of relationships with all of you. This is just an example of one of so many partners, a Danish partner. We ended up doing this soccer tournament every year where we fight for global goals and we create songs about our goals and we compete with all these other women around the world and we each have a global goal. So it's a lot of fun if you ever want to come out. We also got to work in refugee camps outside of Copenhagen with this partner. So like I said, we go anywhere, anytime. Obviously, funding we need for some things. We have a little pockets of funding that we can use for discretionary for important projects like this. So monitoring and evaluation, again, I can send this to you, but the program works. If you create safe spaces for young people, it works and it works fast. Even in the audition process, we have young people. They come in for 3 minutes, and they'll tell us something they care about. But I've had so many young people come. They're better dressed than me. They're in high school, say, one girl was from Brooklyn Tech, and she looked like she had her life together. She was applying for college. I was so impressed with her write-up. And she opened her mouth and she shared a story of burning herself in the bathroom and shoving a rag in her mouth so that no one would hear her scream. And I asked her something that I knew the answer to. I said, have you ever told this to anyone before? And she said, no. And that is what young people are doing. If there's violence against women, if gender-based violence is an epidemic, oftentimes young people are taking it out on themselves. And we find that as soon as you create that safe space, that's the beginning of recovery. We have girls 3, 4, 5, 6 years clean of self-harm, which is if you work in the mental health field, it's very hard to overcome something like this. But it's truly the storytelling model that can start this healing. And again, I'm a power of example myself of how art changed my life. And it's beautiful because this young person came at 16, getting her social work degree at Columbia, works for us, and is running our Youth Advisory Council, and is hopefully going to join our board soon. So creating leadership opportunities, which is the next thing I'm going to talk to you about, is so critical. It's not just about paying a young person. It's about professional development. How are you going to transform that life so that they can have better opportunities? So I'm proud to say that 30% of our teaching artists are young people that have grown up through our program, no teaching experience, previously working at McDonald's, and without a lot of times mentors or people to, how do you teach a young person to show up on time if people don't show on time for them? Like the smallest little things. We help girls with their resumes. We help them get jobs. They don't have to work for us. We just want to make sure that they get the professional development that they need in order to get jobs that are decent paying. Because getting people out of poverty is one of the most important things we can do in this city. As I told you, we are really segregated, and we have a lot of people suffering. And again, also in this country and also around the world. So my favorite season is the fall of the patriarchy. If you would like to smash the patriarchy with me, I would love you to. White supremacy as well. We do a lot, like central to our work is anti-racist work because we think it's peanut butter and jelly. It's not about the oppression Olympics. It's about really coming together and addressing. How am I doing on time, by the way? I'm good. All right. I talk fast because I do want to hear from you. So what can you do to stage the revolution? You can send any young person who's female identified to come and audition for us. It happens every August and September. I say it's like Kwanzaa, Christmas, and Hanukkah. It's only once a year. In order to find out about this, go to girlbeheard.org, just join the mailing list, and we're going to tell you about it. Join us on Facebook, Twitter, however you want to communicate with us, but that is the best way to find out about auditions. You don't have to be an actor. You don't have to be a writer. You don't have to be a self-proclaimed activist. The only requirement is that you come in and tell us something you care about, anything you might care about. And that when you do this, we're not looking for a Shakespeare monologue or Chekhov. That's the only people that pretty much don't get into Girl Be Heard are people that don't have a 3-minute piece about something they care about. So please, we'd love to grow the movement with people that you know. Come to a show. Women's History is a big month for us. So again, if you sign up, you'll find out about shows. We're doing a show tonight. Which show is this? We do it every year. Poetic License in the East Village. But again, we're having shows all the time. What I really want you to come to, though, is our main stage show. So I told you about the show about rape culture. We've done shows called Embodied about the $55 billion diet industry, telling our young people they're fat, ugly, and stupid. Pretty much telling all women and others that we're fat, ugly, and stupid. So a really powerful show. We've done shows on sex trafficking, gun violence. But this year's show is called This Is What Democracy Looks Like. Shout out to Democracy Now! We all love Amy Goodman. So we'd love to work with you. We have 10 shows. We have 200 seats at every show. It's Union Square. It's easy to get to. And no one gets turned away for lack of funds. We will give out as many free tickets as is needed, but we also have a sliding scale. So we have a fairy godmother ticket for $50 if you want to pay for other people. So no one gets turned away. So bring us your hungry, bring us your poor, bring us your major donors too, because they can buy fairy godmother tickets. So just know that access is so important because we know so truly that opportunity, I should say talent, is distributed equally, but opportunity is not. So we're really in the business of creating opportunity. We also have a Young Professionals Committee. If you want to join that, it's really fun. I'm having them over for Shabbat dinner in a couple weeks, so apply, and maybe you'll come over for some home cooking. I'll make you some matzo ball soup. We also have a board of directors, so if you're interested in that. We have a really key position opened. I'm ridiculously slow at hiring. It's kind of like Girl Be Heard Mafia. We have such a great team that I want to make sure that whoever comes in really understands what we do, that it really is about intersectional feminism. It's about anti-racist work. It's about truly looking at equality. And so if you know anyone that cares about these things, we would love them to apply for this position. It's the Director of Education and Human Potential. It oversees all the programs that I talked to you about, from detention centers to the after schools to the church programs, and Hanukkah, I should say the synagogues too. We work in all faith-based organizations, so send them my way. We also, if you're interested in sponsoring Girl, the detention center, anything like that, I'd love to talk to you after. I made a couple other notes. I'm so happy. I talk fast. How much time do I have? Okay, great. Well, if there's time later, I do have a piece. It's called Home is Not Where the Heart Is. It's about my own story of incest. I can send it out to you all. It's fine. Again, I share these stories not for you to feel bad, but to know that recovery is possible. Recovery is possible. It really, really is. It doesn't mean it's easy. It doesn't mean we don't go out and get the help we need, outside help, inside help, artistic help. Sometimes for some of us who are like Humpty Dumpty and have to be put back together again, it's like a whole village. But the beautiful thing is, I have my master's in public health, so if y'all need resources, I know where to get them, especially for young people. There's so many free, amazing services for young people to overcome so much trauma and so much difficulty. Last but not least, I know you guys some of our speakers talked about personal things in terms of their art. And I actually met my husband crawling on pianos doing a comedy cabaret show. I didn't get to do this show because I felt so confident and smart, and I loved my voice. I literally hated myself. I had so much, but I did this thing called the Artist's Way, which was spoken about earlier, about these morning pages. And I just kept writing 3 pages in the morning and 3 pages in the morning. And then I gathered other women, and I had an Artist's Way group. And I just kept writing. And no matter what the voice in my head said about my having no talent, my voice being bad, I had these other women telling me that I was worth it. And so there is really beauty in community. And I would say with Girl Be Heard, it's the ensemble. If you're part of a herd, and this is scientifically proven, you're less likely to get picked picked off for rape, but also picked off to have maybe a job that's not your highest potential. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to you. I'd love to answer any questions you have. And thank you so much for letting a girl be heard. Oh, I'm picking? Okay, I thought you were picking. Yes, go. No.
It's fine.
I see a hand. Hi.
Thank you. That was so inspiring. I just wonder, that one could use some of your methods, like doesn't normally. Happens to power.
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I think that if you look at the curriculum, like you can take one of those chapters out, you can study it, we could have a teaching artist work with the team, but even this exercise that was done before is we don't often like break bread with each other. We don't take time to like listen to each other, especially in this country of workaholism, and I'm like guilty as charged. Like we're not making time to create spaces. So in terms of like an individual doing this work, the magic actually is in the ensemble. That's where the magic happens. That's where you break down the silos. You realize you're not alone. Like the first thing we do every time we have the first Girl Be Heard workshop is we have people read their pieces that they auditioned with. We had someone read a piece about, it was the self-harm piece. I couldn't believe it. Like of all the group, she said, oh, I want to read my piece. I was like, wow, you never told anybody. You told us, and now you want to tell like 15 other people? I was like, wow. Wrote the piece. And another young woman that was with us 3 years raised her hand and said, this is the piece I was never going to share with anybody. And so there is something magic about ensemble. Listen, I'm happy to talk to someone one-on-one. I love, as someone who has struggled so much as a nonprofit, trying to run a nonprofit in the middle of the recession and having to have a million other jobs was tough. But now that we've been successful on the other side, I'd love to mentor other nonprofits, so feel free to reach out to me. All I ask is that you do reach out to me on LinkedIn or another way. Just write a note. For some reason, really creepy guys in the military are reaching out to me all the time, so most of the things I say no to. So I don't know how that's happening, but just make sure to write a personal note. I met you at the Kota event. I have such love for Kota, and like what you've created today is so beautiful. So just remember to do that if you reach out to me.